Hi, I'm Zach Patton, Chief Editor of the Content Studio at eRepublic and Government Technology Magazine. Welcome to our virtual Q&A. Today I'm with Tom Luparello with NTT Data Services, and we're here to talk about modernizing state unemployment insurance systems. Tom is a public sector strategic advisor on unemployment insurance at NTT Data. He has more than 25 years of experience in government and industry, and he previously served as the CIO and Executive Director at the District of Columbia Department of Employment Services. At NTT Data, he supports the company's initiatives with state workforce agencies and other IT solutions for the public sector. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. This is certainly a timely issue. These systems have been under tremendous stress this year, triggered by the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic. A number of state unemployment insurance systems struggled or crashed after the pandemic hit in March. What are some of the primary reasons that those systems just couldn't keep up?
There are a number of reasons that really came together to form a perfect storm of why those systems endured so many challenges under COVID. And they're all understandable and predictable and unfortunate. There were deficiencies in system architecture that really stem back decades. These systems were primarily developed on mainframe. Even some systems that have been modernized are really relying on very similar architecture. They're hosted in some instances in the cloud, but in many instances still behind state firewalls. And as a result, they weren't able to scale. They're fairly rigid, so accommodating all of the new programs and benefits support that are offered through the CARES Act were all very difficult for those systems to accommodate. And all of these issues came at a time when the staffing for UI agencies was at a historic low because of the low unemployment rates prior to COVID hitting.
Yeah. So the pandemic prompted a lot of new federal legislation around UI benefits, some of which is temporary. But how has that affected legacy UI systems? And why does that make it more critical for states to use modern technology that's more flexible?
Absolutely. I think an important thing to understand is that old adage is true. The only constant is change. And even though the amount of change that these systems were asked to accommodate was beyond anything we've ever seen before in a very short period of time, legislative changes happen all the time. So being able to accommodate those changes, that's a critical component of systems and something that they've historically lacked.
Now, obviously, citizens depend on these kinds of safety net services in times like these. How can new tools like analytics help states ensure that they can meet citizen needs?
That too is an excellent question. Analytics is an extremely important component. Also, robotic process automation or RPA, and proper utilization of data that's available. These new programs allowed populations that historically were not eligible for unemployment insurance to start to claim. And the agencies had to support that. And they didn't necessarily, or in most cases, they did not have access to data to properly validate those claims. And as a result, the analytics that are most important now are those that can be employed to validate many of the claims that have been paid because of the new programs, the lack of data. Some nefarious elements exploited those systems. So money went out the door that shouldn't have, or should have gone to individuals that would have benefited from it rather than, again, nefarious elements. So all of those modern technologies for analyzing and adjudicating, dealing with the case management around these claims, all critical right now.
So we've seen some states implement chatbots and other technologies to fill those immediate gaps during the pandemic. But why is it important to keep a longer term solution in mind?
Well, many of those solutions, although very positive, they helped
Mhm.
with the customer service challenge that state UI agencies were facing. They're really stopgap measures, or they were reactions to that core system being overloaded. During the last recession, we saw a similar version of what we're seeing now, where systems were overloaded, there were additional programs deployed, they were not able to accommodate them. Um, so in this case, with all of the new claimants, I mean, those systems being overloaded pushed those individuals into other customer support channels. And certainly that was necessary, but that doesn't address their immediate need of actually receiving benefits. So addressing that issue at a core level, absolutely critical here as we go forward.
What does real progress or transformation even look like when it comes to UI systems?
So ideally, you want to go with a system that has proven itself reliable under this type of strain. There are a few out there, although for the most part, we've seen most of these systems buckle. So the pandemic was an acid test for existing systems. Intelligent design, flexible business rules, also very critical. Um, Proven cloud architecture, not a system that's just deployed on cloud virtual machines, but one that actually takes advantage of the scalability that a cloud hosted solution offers. And a quick modernization strategy. These are large projects, these modernizations. They take multiple years to deploy, and keeping the momentum up is difficult, especially when you may have changes in administration or changes in unemployment rates that vary the workload or priorities placed on these system modernizations. So having a solution that can be deployed quickly and where real value can be seen in the short term, absolutely critical. And all of that too, that quick deployment, that facilitates organizational change management, which can be a challenge, in any business, but certainly in federal and state agencies as well.
So, how can states really start to move in that direction?
Well, certainly learn from the past. I mean, we've seen, in less than the past 20 years, a recession and now the pandemic. They've triggered similar loads on these systems,
Mhm.
and similar cracks in those systems have been revealed in both circumstances. So, really looking at that as a necessity that be addressed. You can't assume that these types of outlier circumstances won't occur again. So a disciplined, modern approach to address these historic issues, it's critical right now. And the type of architecture that we discussed, the type of methodology for deployment, that's the approach to take.
Thanks so much, Tom, for such a good conversation. And thanks to all of you for joining us. We'll see you again for another virtual Q&A soon.